All right, welcome back in, everybody. Sports Daily here on KFH. Thanks for watching us on our video stream. Sounds like we got the audio taken care of for those folks. You can always watch us on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitch. Right now, joining us on the program, the voice of the K-State Wildcats, Wyatt Thompson. Wyatt, welcome back into Sports Daily. How are you?
Well, I'm doing very well. It's a pretty cloudy, fog, rain type situation here in Houston, getting ready for the game tomorrow. But all good. Yeah.
Well, listen, it is here too, so you're not missing out on anything. It's been that way for a while,
Okay.
but we're going to get some sunshine. This stretch of the schedule, boy, I'm glad K-State got off to the start it did, because when you look at it and you've got your week consists of trips to Ames and then a trip to Houston, that's a pretty tough week on the Big 12 grind.
Well, you're absolutely right. And I think we knew it was going to be. I remember doing some interviews prior to leaving for Des Moines and then the little bus ride up to Ames for the game that, Iowa State 11-0 at home, Houston 11-0 at home going into this week. So kind of tells you everything that, K-State faced. And I know we'll talk a lot about the Iowa State game, and there's a lot to talk about certainly, but it shows you what this league is all about. Tough games.
What do you take away from the Iowa State game earlier this week? I know that, of course, the Wildcats fall down early. They get back into the game, and then ultimately kind of some drama the last couple of minutes of the game itself, and Iowa State pulls away.
Yeah, I think when you kind of start to break down the game, I think the obvious that sticks out was some of the, controversy towards the end and a technical foul call and, those types of things. I know, people were talking after the game too about the fact that there was a stretch there in the second half where K-State had a stretch with 8 straight possessions where they were called for a foul and 10 of 11. It was just an oddly called game from my personal perspective. And I thought it changed really from the first half to the second. But the other thing, and I have to be honest about this, is that, K-State did not, and I'll repeat that, did not play very well in the first half, and it cost them. They're down at the break by a count of 41-29. And you look at those first half numbers, K-State was 10 of 24 for 42% and 8 of 10 at the line, but still was down 12. And part of the reason why was turnovers, didn't handle the trap of Iowa State very well, but made some really good adjustments and had some opportunities to come back. And they were much, much, much more aggressive, better cuts, led to better shooting. And they shot 48% in the second half. And this is the telling stat for me. K-State in the first period where they're not very aggressive, they're 1 of 8 from threes, and they were tough threes. In the second half with good threes, they go 7 of 16. The bugaboo, though, was the poor free throw shooting late. Second half from the free throw line, they were 7 of 13. So the game was somewhat all over the map. It was a good game, hard-fought game, some controversy, but another opportunity where K-State tied it in the second half 5 times, could never get the lead. And those are the ones that hurt, much like the game at Tech. You had a chance and didn't do it. And in this league, if you have a chance, boy, you sure would like to get it done.
Wyatt, I have really enjoyed the growth of Arthur Kaluma. I know they had high expectations for him coming in, but it almost feels like, and maybe this was on us, I think we all expected Tyler Perry to be that guy, and he hasn't been, and Kaluma sort of has been. And that's been a really nice development. What have you seen from him, and what has made it work for him so well in his run for K-State so far?
I love the question because I'm a big Arthur Kaluma fan. Not that I'm not of the other guys, and you would surmise that certainly. But I guess my point here is that I think at the end of the day, what has stuck out for me all season long through the growing pains, the ups and the downs, for a pretty decently consistent player, is that he really cares. He's an effort guy, much more talented, I think, than a lot of people really appreciate. I think he should be appreciated more for what he's doing. I mean, he's been a 36, 37 minute a game guy. And the other night he had 16 points, played his tail off. And the first thing he said to me when I talked to him after the game was, "I was a poor rebounder tonight." I thought that was extraordinary. I love his game. Left hand, right hand, shoots it to deep. I think that's the thing too. Even just going into the game the other night, he's shooting 41% from three. And for a three man, that's really, really good. So I know coach has told me multiple times that he could be an all-league defensive guy too, with his improvement. Who knows whether he will or won't be, but the fact that coach is talking like that after the way he started defensively when the year began tells you a lot about his toughness and his just his willingness to give everything. And I appreciate that about him a lot.
Wyatt, you mentioned the rebounding. This was the third game in a row that K-State was out rebounded. Now they were 2-1 in the last 3 games. Even in the Baylor win, they were still out rebounded. What do you think is going to take? And I know Arthur Kaluma is probably a large part of that, but what do you think it's going to take to improve that moving forward in conference play?
Well, I think I'm just going to be blunt here. I think to be a good rebounder, you've got to want to do it. And K-State the other night got out rebounded 38-25. And when you compare the teams and what they are, if you want to point to some things why K-State got beat, that would be one of them. And I didn't mention that a moment ago, but I'm sitting here looking at my box score, and here you go. You ready? Gasson, 2 rebounds. Kaluma, 2 rebounds. Will McNair, 1 rebound. Jarrell Colbert, 3. Those are the guys that should be a lot better than that. Now, Tyler Perry had 3, Cam Carter had 3 in 20 minutes, and Dorian Finister had 6. They just got to be better. And it isn't always about effort necessarily, but I think you do have to be somebody. They're better when how do I want to say this? It's in the front of their mind that rebounding is important. When they've had that in the front of their mind, they've been a pretty good rebounding team. And sometimes when they don't, they're not.
But are they going to be? I mean, that's kind of my thing with it. I just,
Sure.
I don't know that the identity of this team has ever struck me as that team that's going to dominate you on the boards. And that's not to say that they can't win in other ways. I think that they can. I just don't. I mean, I guess my expectation isn't for them to be one of the better rebounding teams in the Big 12. I just don't think they have that kind of size.
Well, that's probably fair, and or depth, to be honest with you. And you look at the competition. I'm very concerned about this game with Houston from that perspective. I'm concerned on a lot of levels. Don't misunderstand. But these guys, you look at their numbers. They're plus almost 8 in the rebound margin, and they're just big and physical and tough. And if you don't rebound and handle their pressure, you're going to be in for a long day. And that's just the reality of it.
You mentioned a couple of the bench players, Wyatt, especially Dorian Finister. And I know that foul trouble played into a lot of it earlier this week against Iowa State, but we saw some of the bench players get more minutes than what we've been accustomed to throughout the season. Where do you stand on the development of some of those guys? Finister, Jarrell Colbert, Day Ames, others come for Jerome Tang.
I like that question a lot, and I asked that of Coach Tang prior to the game for pregame with Iowa State, and I think he's really happy with the progress of some of those guys. I think we've seen Dorian in the last 2 to 3 weeks really make a significant jump. He played almost 21 minutes the other night and had 4 points and 6 rebounds, and 2 of those were offensive boards. He's a good athlete for his position. I think he took one in the mouth the other night, an elbow in the mouth, and you'd have to see his lip to appreciate it, and he just kept kind of grinding through. So he's getting tougher and is more comfortable, I think, and more confident right now than he's been in the short time he's been at K-State. I'm a fan of Day and RJ Jones. I think I'll say this bluntly, they're barely scratching the surface of what I think they're going to be, barely. Not doesn't mean they haven't had their moments, because they have. RJ had a big shot in beating Baylor. You guys know that. But I think as we continue to get closer into this, and these coaches start saying, like, hey, it's mid to late January now, these guys aren't freshmen anymore. You kind of hope that continues through February and March, because they were 4-star guys for a reason, right? And they're skilled. They just got to bring it a little bit more about every time and be more consistent with it.
I want to talk just a second, Wyatt, about football. What can you tell us about, the portal, I guess, and what kind of noise is being made? We had another major job go by. It looks like, we won't have to deal with the coaching rumors this time, but what kind of work is being done in the portal now? And have there been additions or chatter about things that are going to help K-State football win games next year?
Well, I think if you look at, as an example, the spring roster for K-State, and I do this all the time. I think you're going to see some guys that are new to this program step in and help right away. There are other guys that didn't play significant roles last year that were portal guys too, and like a Tyler Nellam comes to mind, a corner from Atlanta who was at SEMO last year. But I think the Spradley Dimps kid as a wide receiver is just a freshman, and he's maybe a poor example because he's a freshman, but they've recruited good quality guys. Maybe the better example would be the kid that everybody's talking about here recently, is the Penn State transfer, Dante Cephas. The K-State had, I've said this over and over, and I believe it to be so, K-State has more than in virtually every year since this thing began benefited more from the portal in football than they've been hurt by it. And I continue to stand by that. And I think when you look at the guys like Julius Brents and people like that, and even though Kobe Savage didn't finish his career here, I mean, think about the 2 years that K-State got out of him. So they're doing a nice job of that.
Wyatt, Kellis Robinette had an incredible article that came out the other day about how the Wildcats continue to retain Chris Kleiman when there are big jobs that are open around the country, really prominent positions. And Washington was one a week or two ago. And of course, Michigan, and, there are others. And just that relationship between Chris Kleiman and Gene Taylor. I know we've talked about it before, but I know that you have, you've got with both Gene Taylor and Chris Kleiman, their relationship and that loyalty that they have with each other.
Yeah, and you're talking about some pretty good jobs here, right? I mean, that's the thing that I'm going to say here, is that kind of sticks out, and yet he does not, in any way, to me, seem to be tempted to bite on that. I think Coach Kleiman is by nature a very loyal person, and I don't make a lot of promises, but I can say this and with 100% or maybe even 1,000% confidence that he loves working with and for Gene Taylor. The trust there is the thing that I think sticks out, and honestly, the friendship too. And so there's a comfort for him there. And let's be honest, the guy's making a boatload of money living in Manhattan, Kansas. There are worse things that could happen to a person, right? I mean, he's doing really quality work. But I think at some level, money is always important. I'm not trying to downplay that in any way, but I think he's very comfortable with the money he's making, where he's at, how it's going, the leadership, from his boss, the athletic director. So lots of good there.
All right, Wyatt, what do we have coming up for the Houston game this weekend? It's a game that you'll hear right here on KFH. It is an 11 a.m. tip. What do you guys have in store for us?
Well, looking forward to this one because, as I said before, they're really tough, physical. It's hard going into these kinds of games. You have to be so ready and do so many things well. We'll kind of try to preview that a little bit in the pregame with the assistant coach, with the scout and coach's pregame comments. But just being around them today, and I've stepped out of a film session there to visit with you guys here, and they, that they've got. I don't know how much you want to talk about this with Kelvin Sampson, but this guy's honing in on 250 wins in Houston and 750 in his career. Those are pretty staggering.
We think he's one of the best, by the way. Yeah,
no
he's
doubt.
been highly regarded here playing against Wichita State for a while.
Oh, for sure. And I'm probably preaching the choir that way. I always kind of don't think about it that way, and I should, because they were, in the American last year, they were 17-1, if memory serves me correctly. You don't get them very often.
Run he's been on. Yeah.
And again, I think the guy that probably portrays what they are as much as anybody is Jamal Shedd, right? He's Sharon Collins, don't you think?
Yeah.
I don't know that he's as good
That's
offensively as Sharon Collins, but in terms of his defense, leadership, toughness, all of those kind of things, that's who I think he is.
I would agree with that. And as far as Sampson, what stood out to me is Isaac Brown, the former coach of Wichita State, used to always point to him as who he thought was the best coach in the business, just, coach. And I think that there's something to that. The run Houston's on right now is incredible. They've stepped right into the Big 12, and they're going to just keep it rolling. I love it for the Big 12, by the way. I know everyone probably doesn't like to see them twice a year, but for the Big 12, what an awesome addition that is to get, that area engaged into this league this way, and it helps the league and what I think will be a big TV contract down the road. I love it, but now you get to play them 1 or 2 times a year, which is maybe not quite as fun.
Well, and here's the thing too, they're 4-2 in the league. Those losses on the road at TCU and at Iowa State, that's not a crime. But following up a 33-4, they have just 2 starters back, and yet you look at the guy. They have quite a few returning guys, but not many starters, and yet you don't see them miss much of a beat. Right now, it helps when you're adding an LJ Cryer, right, one of the elite shooters in major college basketball. I think he really probably is as hard-nosed as any Division I coach that comes to mind when I think about those kind of things. You simply stated, you guys will agree with this, I'm sure. You can't play for him unless you defend. You can't. It's impossible. You agree with that?
And that's what makes him so great. Yes, that's what makes him so great. Yeah.
They're giving up 51.9 points a game, fellas.
That's wild.
Crazy.
That's just wild. In the big, and they've played 6 Big 12 games too, by the way, in that. It's not like they're playing it's going to be fun. We're looking forward to watching K-State take that sort of challenge on. I think it's just one next step in what this team's going to be this year, but it'll certainly be fun. And to your point, I'm as excited to see Tang versus Sampson as I am anything else. Because Tang has shown in a very short amount of time that he clearly is too one of the best on the bench there that we have in the country. Just this year was not supposed to be this way, and it's been far exceeding the expectations. We're looking forward to it. Wyatt, we'll have you guys on the air. What time did you say coverage starts?
10 a.m. We got an early game, man. We played the latest game of the midweek, 8 o'clock Wednesday in Ames, and here we got the earliest game on Saturday. But hey, you got to go play them.
10 a.m. right here on KFH. Wyatt, we appreciate it. Enjoy your time down in Houston.
Thanks, guys. Great talking to you as always. Appreciate it.
Always such good stuff from the voice of the Wildcats, Wyatt Thompson. Good perspective on everything. If you missed any of that, if you're joining us late, you can always go back and listen for free on the Odyssey app. We're going to come back. We'll begin our Chiefs pregame coverage, we'll call it, here as we look into some final things. We'll get you caught up on the injuries from Thursday as we begin to make final assessments on this next AFC Championship game. We'll be back with more Sports Daily right after this.
.97.5 and 1240 KFH.
Tune in to the Retire Hour Show Saturday at 7 a.m. on KFH or online at KFHradio.com.
Sponsored by Market Advisory Group.
Go Hog Wild Pit Barbecue. Hog Wild, get some for you.
Ever stare at the Hog Wild menu and feel like you can't make up your mind because it all looks so good? Well, Bingo Brashear's Hog Wild partner and general manager at 21st and Tyler has the tastiest solution.
When I want a little bit of everything, I get a little bit of everything on Hog Wild Smokestack Sandwich. On a butter toasted bun, we pile our hickory smoked beef brisket with juicy hot wings, and you top it with our award-winning barbecue sauce. The hard part is choosing between fresh curly fries, classic baked beans, or coleslaw on the side.
Hog Wild Pit Barbecue's hero of a sandwich saves the biggest appetites from indecision at all 6 locations in Wichita. Also in Derby, El Dorado, Hutchinson, and Salina.
Go Hog Wild Pit Barbecue. Hog Wild, get some for you. But don't be late, we close at 8.
The biggest winner in the big game could be you. Thanks to BetMGM, the king of sportsbooks is offering new customers a chance to score $158 in bonus bets instantly. That's right, instantly. Just download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code BUZZER. Then place a $5 moneyline wager on the big game. You'll receive $158 in bonus bets instantly, regardless of your wager's outcome. Don't miss your opportunity to cross the goal line on the money line as pro football's top teams clash for the championship. Can't be in Vegas for the big game? Then bring the big game excitement to you with the king of sportsbooks. BetMGM and GameSense remind you to play responsibly. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only. Kansas only. New customer offer. Subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel.
Who makes your first impression all it can be? Pave the way.
Are you looking to replace or repair your pavement or perhaps install a new driveway or parking lot? Call Pave the Way, the pavement professionals at 316-990-5855 today for a fast free estimate for all your asphalt and concrete needs. Or visit them online at pavethewayusa.com.
Pave the way. Kicking asphalt every day.
Don't gamble your hard-earned money away with online retailers, big box stores, or consignment centers. Crazy J's Furniture and Sleep Shop is always your best bet on brand new quality home furnishings and bedding at the best prices in town. Support local small business and keep your dollars in our community. Open 7 days a week at 604 North Tyler and 1026 South Oliver, or visit online at crazyjsfurniture.com.
Crazy J's Furniture and Sleep Shop. Crazy, the sanest deal in town.
Madison Legal is the way to go. Call 550-0000.
In a wreck, need a check? I'm attorney Tyler Patterson, and you only need to make
No trader.
Oh, okay, take it easy. We're going on the air.
This is Sports Daily on KFH.
Chiefs games available live for free over on KNSS and on the free Odyssey app. You can tune into KNSS Sunday at noon for Chiefs Radio Network pregame coverage. You'll have the Westwood One national play-by-play, then back to Chiefs Radio Network postgame coverage. That's all for free on the Odyssey app. Just search KNSS at noon Sunday. KFH will have the full national call. Both ways to listen to the game. Should be a lot of fun there on Sunday. So Mark Andrews is activated now. That's official. He'll play Sunday. Tommy, the Ravens are getting a lot of positive injury news. Marlon Humphrey also looks like he may be able to play. And then you look at the Chiefs' official injury report, and it is very, very long. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 17 players listed on the injury report in some capacity. There are names like L'Jarius Sneed on there, who's been a limited participant. Isaiah Pacheco hasn't practiced all week. Not worried about either of those guys. And in fact, I agree with the Pacheco call. Put that dude on ice. And if L'Jarius Sneed needs to rest, something great. The ones that we're really watching are Trey Smith got back to a full practice yesterday, so you can cross that one off the list. Mike Edwards, who looks promising. He was a limited participant yesterday after not practicing Wednesday. Joe Thuney, who we've reported to you here, I think it was ESPN, saying that he's probably doubtful at this point, but going to try to play. That's obviously significant. Joe Thuney, especially when you know you want to run the ball. So Joe Thuney we'll keep an eye on. Willie Gay we'll keep an eye on. He was limited both Wednesday and Thursday. Today for him is probably the most critical to see if he practices. He had a stiff neck, I believe Andy Reid said. Dan Israel told us earlier in the week he would be surprised if Gay didn't figure out a way to play. So that one could be as impactful as any. Trent McDuffie has listed on there. He's fine. Kadarius Toney still is not a full he practiced in full Wednesday and then had to take some time off yesterday. Sky Moore still not practicing. But I think the big ones, Tommy, are Thuney and Gay. And we'll just have to see, because it looks like Mike Edwards will be able to go. So it's Thuney and Gay that we're watching. And in a game that, will feature the run, both of those guys are pretty critical to that on each side of the ball.
Yeah, let's start with Joe Thuney. So it was actually Adam Schefter reporting that Joe Thuney was unlikely to play on Sunday, that he would do anything possible to try to play, but it looks unlikely that he'll be able to make it happen. Now, of course, things can change between now and Sunday afternoon. The one good thing, the one positive thing is that Nick Allegretti is the backup to Joe Thuney. And Allegretti is a veteran. Now, of course, not a first-team All-Pro like Joe Thuney is, but you do have that experience in big games from a guy like Nick Allegretti. But I agree with you. Kansas City, you would think conceivably will want to lean on Isaiah Pacheco and should lean on Isaiah Pacheco. And if you don't have the run blocking ability of Joe Thuney in the game, that's going to be an issue. So that one bears watching for sure. And I think that we can both agree that Joe Thuney has probably been the best offensive lineman that Kansas City has. Now, I think he's better than obviously any of the ends when you're looking at Jawan Taylor or Donovan Smith, clearly. And then of course, Trey Smith and Creed Humphrey. I think that Joe Thuney has outplayed both of those guys as well this season. So that would be a significant loss for Kansas City on the offensive line. Willie Gay for sure, because we know what his role is on that defense, and we know how important he is when you've got a running quarterback opposing you. We saw it a week ago when Willie Gay exited the game, and you could definitely feel his absence as Josh Allen was able to run the football almost at will in the first half. So I totally agree with you. Those are the two players that are going to be we're going to want to bear watching as we go over the next 48 hours.
Yeah, I think Gay concerns me more. Andy Reid pointed to Drew Tranquil as being able to do a really nice job. The one thing
I played great. He's been a great addition to Kansas.
And it's not the thing that made Gay so difficult in the Buffalo game is it happened during the game, right? So now you've got to adjust to it. I would imagine that they've been adjusting. Now you've got a week to adjust versus the game in Buffalo. You'll have something in place just in case now. And that will certainly even help more. And I agree. do think the Chiefs have depth on the offensive line. I
They
mean,
do.
I think that's a place that
Alec
they
Grady's
have
a
some
veteran, and
depth.
that's great. That's great.
But he ain't Joe Tooney, and nobody
Yeah,
is.
he's not a
And
first team
so
All-Pro.
that's and Isaiah Pacheco, I think, can find success despite it with the style in which he runs. But you need Joe Tooney, and I mean, it's a pec, man. I don't know what you can do to power through a pec injury. My suspicions are that you kind of can't. And then it becomes like, do you really want your star guard out there without the full use of his chest muscles trying to push guys around? So there's it may be one of those things where, yeah, he can handle the pain of it, but can he be effective with it? That becomes a problem. And it's kind of the same thing with Willie Gay if he has a stiff neck. Like, it doesn't matter how tough you are. If you're less effective, you could be hurting your team. So you have to really watch that.
I think with both of those injuries, the other question is, can either one of them get worse if they play in this game? Because if they win the game, obviously you've got a week off before the Super Bowl. Can you make that pec injury or that neck injury worse for either Tooney or Willie Gay? And if you can't, if it's it's kind of a pain management thing, it's not going to get worse. It's just going to be painful to get through it. Then does that influence the decision to have them play in this game? Because if it's not going to get any worse, if you're not risking that injury getting any worse, then, maybe there is an argument that could be made that they could be out there if they can work through the pain.
Yeah, I think that's always the case with the trainers. I think if you ask the two players, they would probably be willing to take the risk because they know they got to get there first. But yeah, that's why you have trainers, right? You just ask those questions. Is this going to get worse? And is this guy going to be at full strength with it?
Yeah.
And those are questions we'll fight today. Look, during the season, Friday practices are when you kind of really learn. And I don't think it's quite as cut and dry as it is in the regular season. But I would imagine if you see them practice today, there's a pretty good chance. If you don't see them practice today, it'd be doubtful at best. So we'll keep our eye on that injury report today. It's always a critical one on Fridays in the NFL. We're going to take a break. We're going to come back. Hour number 2 for you coming on Sports Daily. It's Albracht and Castor. Plenty more to get to. We'll give you some final thoughts and predictions on this game when we return.
97.5 and 1240 KFH.
All right, welcome back in, everybody. Sports Daily on KFH. Jacob Albracht, Tommy Castor with you as we continue to get you ready for, well, what should be another classic, another fun one. Number hasn't moved, Tommy, with any of the injury news. The Ravens still 3.5-point favorites over the Chiefs. It's been really tricky. I like the Chiefs to win the game. Nothing has wavered me from that. If all of a sudden Tooney and Gay are both out or something like that this weekend, it's one that, like, I'm not betting anything until I know who's playing in this game. Like maybe right before the game kicks. But I like the Chiefs, and we've gone through it. I think that these teams are more similar than they're different. I think the Ravens have a check in the column of overall talent, but I think that the Chiefs have Mahomes, and I think that they have Kelsey. Mark Andrews playing is also very interesting, but you've got this dynamic of, and we saw it so often with Tom Brady, right? It's like if you play poker, it's a chip in a chair, right? You've got the opportunity, and you've got Mahomes, and I'm just going to take my chances with that. And know that their defense has stepped up to every challenge this year, and there's no reason they shouldn't be able to step up to this one as well.
I've been really high on the Ravens this entire season, going all the way back to the regular season. When I felt like they were underrated for a while in the regular season as they were beating up on their opponents basically week to week. And I went through their schedule. They don't really have a lot of bad losses. They've got a couple that aren't great, but I didn't really feel like they really laid a whole lot of eggs this season. There might have been one or two of them, but really other than that, it was a pretty complete year, I feel like, from top to bottom for Baltimore. The one thing, though, and again, I've been very high on Baltimore, and I've also been critical of Kansas City at multiple times during the course of this season for good reason. But the one thing that Baltimore has going into this game that Kansas City doesn't is pressure. The pressure is on Baltimore. The pressure is not on Kansas City going into this game. I wholeheartedly believe that because of everything that has happened with Lamar Jackson coming into this season, back into the offseason, the drama with them and whether or not he was going to come back. Were they going to franchise tag him? Were they going to trade him? What was that going to look like? And then ultimately he comes back. And then there's this reunion between Lamar Jackson and the Ravens, and they've had a great season. It's been debated all week long. Is this season a failure if Baltimore doesn't make it to the Super Bowl? And I don't know if I want to go that far. But I do think that the pressure is on the Ravens and Lamar Jackson to get over that hump and realize that, look, they've got a commitment to Lamar Jackson, and Lamar Jackson is committed back to the Ravens. They're kind of married together at this point. Can Lamar Jackson get them all the way? Can he take them all the way? And this is the best shot that they've had in quite a long time for them to do that. So the pressure, I think, is on the shoulders of Baltimore.
Man, I hadn't seen that, and I'm looking up at a TV right now that's literally the headline is the season a failure if Lamar Jackson?
Oh, is it really?
I have not thought about that at all because I don't believe that at all. Like, not even a little bit.
But I think that I don't know if you agree with me, but I
mean, Baltimore
I don't know if I want to go
so
that far.
Vastly
I do think that the
overachieved this year.
Have they, though? Because I think from a talent perspective, they're right there. Like, they've got
if you look back to the beginning, if you look back at the beginning of this season, we wouldn't have put Baltimore. I mean, you maybe would put them in the playoffs, right?
I had them in the playoffs. You go back to the predictions.
No, I know, but what is a wild card, or did you have them as a divisional winner?
No, I had,
what I
mean?
Cincinnati
winning the division.
And right. So you either had Cincinnati there. We knew Cleveland was going to be good. Pittsburgh we thought would be good, and they were. Kansas City was Super Bowl or bust, as it always is. And so I haven't thought about the dynamic of that pressure shifting. I don't agree with it. I think there's pressure inherently on Kansas City every year, but I also think there's pressure when you think about the ending years of Travis Kelce, however many more he has left. There's all the chatter about Andy Reid. The Chiefs have already, they've been to, this will be number 6 AFC Championship game They have 2 Super Bowls out of 6. So 30% of the time they've delivered. I also think that creates pressure. And if you,
that's pretty good though.
I understand, but Tommy, remember when you were at like peak panic on the Chiefs, it was because you feel like they need to win the Super Bowl every year.
Sure. Well, no. My peak panic with Kansas City was that they were not performing up to the standards that we have for them. It wasn't for me at the time. It wasn't about them making it all the way. I didn't think they were even good enough to get to this point right now. Like with everything surrounding them and the way that the mistakes that weren't getting any better, all of that, I felt like they were not performing up to those standards. So the fact that they're now at this point, I'm not saying that it's like I don't really care one way or another. I absolutely do. But I think that the pressure's off their shoulders because I think, if anything, Kansas City has overachieved to get to this point as opposed to Baltimore.
I think Kansas City has achieved appropriately. I think it was a rocky road to get there, but they're right where everybody expected them to be to begin with. I think a reason, and look, nationally, I don't think there was a level of panic with the Chiefs like there was locally. But I think the only reason that it wasn't being allowed to be worked through is because you always start with the highest expectations. I think anytime the Chiefs reach this point, there's pressure. I think there's pressure on Mahomes to go show he can win another road playoff game as an underdog. I think there's pressure because this specific chapter of Chiefs Kingdom is at least in its final stages, not for Mahomes, but maybe for the tight end Hall of Fame GOAT tight end, maybe for the Hall of Fame head coach. Chris Jones is going to be gone after this year. I do think there's a lot of pressure on Kansas City here because we don't know what the future looks like without, when you talk about Andy Reid and Chris Jones and Travis Kelce, you're talking about 3 of the best that have ever done it at what they do, right? If not the best. Those guys, we're not going to have this version of the Chiefs really even any longer. Chris Jones will most likely be gone. And then you've got all the chatter about Kelce and Reed. I don't buy as much into that, but it's at least coming to the end. So when you have all of that and you're in this position with Mahomes, I do think there's a ton of pressure. I bet you if you asked, well, I don't know what the Chiefs would say, but 2 out of 6, like and again, it's only brought on by the success. It was the same thing that happened with the Patriots. Like there were just expectations to get the job done every year. Baltimore,
but don't you think there are now those expectations on Baltimore? Because Lamar Jackson and the Ravens agree to this big contract, all this money. They've married themselves together. You've got a great coach in John Harbaugh, and you've got a former MVP in Lamar Jackson. Like the
current MVP is going to win it again.
The coach quarterback tandem is there in Baltimore in the same way that it is in Kansas City. And so I think that now the question becomes, can those 2 guys in Baltimore get over the hump and go to a Super Bowl and win a championship? Whereas Kansas City's already done it. And so I'm not saying that it's like, hey, we already did it, we don't care. That's not the case. But I'm saying that the pressure is always greater when you haven't gotten there before and you're knocking on the doorstep to get there. As opposed to
Harbaugh has a Super
2 of the
Bowl.
last 5 years. I know he does, but Lamar doesn't. Lamar doesn't have a Super Bowl.
I understand, but I think the difference between the pressure Buffalo was feeling and the pressure Baltimore will have now is not as high. This is because this was so unexpected, right? There's not an outcome of this game.
How was it
was?
Unexpected?
I'm talking about before the year. I'm talking about before the season. There is not an outcome of this game.
You didn't think that Baltimore was a playoff team and a team that could.
I didn't think they were going to host. I didn't think they were going to host the AFC Championship game and have historically good, point differentials. No, I didn't think they'd be that good. I thought they'd be fine.
Because as the season is progressing, I never one time thought, "Wow, I'm absolutely shocked that Baltimore is here." No, because Baltimore's a good team. They've been a good team, even though they haven't won the division. Like Cincinnati has been great. Baltimore has been good for a long time.
I'm going back further, though. I'm going back when we're talking about the Lamar Jackson situation. When I think about that, there isn't an outcome in this game that's going to make Ravens fans think that they need a head coaching change or regret the long-term extension to Lamar Jackson. Like the Ravens in that way, like this season has been a great success. There's no wavering confidence in their head coach. They are thrilled that they got Lamar Jackson, locked up. Nothing's going to happen here that makes the Ravens fans throw their hands up and say, God, Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson are never going to get it done. You know what I mean? Whereas when it was Buffalo, that's the concern right now among Buffalo fans because they've had so many opportunities in this spot. It's been a long time since the Ravens have been in this particular spot. And so I do think there is some freedom they can play with here. Had Lamar Jackson not had such a big second half against Houston, maybe that's different. But I think, like, and again, I haven't thought about this before you just brought it up. If I'm thinking about the pressure on these teams, I do think the pressure's higher on Kansas City because they're supposed to be here. They're supposed to be here. They've been here for 6 straight years.
The Ravens made Lamar Jackson the highest paid quarterback in the NFL at the time when they signed him. It was like a $260 million contract over 5 years. They committed to this guy when there was all of this drama and controversy about him wanting out of Baltimore and not being able to find a trade partner. And I mean, that was less than a year ago that we went through all of this.
But he came back and he won the MVP, Tommy. Like, I think that it's okay.
That's great. That's all well and good. But how many opportunities do you have to be in this position if you're Baltimore? The pressure is on the Ravens. The pressure is absolutely on the Ravens. Hosting an AFC championship game, one step away to winning a championship with the guy who already has an MVP and is probably going to get another one. You've got to take advantage of that while you have a home AFC championship game.
Look, there's
talented roster and a great
Right.
defense that the Ravens have. The pressure is, I'm not saying that both teams don't have it, but it's more on the shoulder of Baltimore.
It's both. Obviously, they want to win the game. But I just think inherently with the Chiefs, the pressure is always higher. And I think the reactions to the struggles this year are a perfect example of that.
Okay, so let me line this out to you the way that I feel about this game. If the Chiefs lose the game on Sunday, when it's all said and done, my reaction to that is going to be, man, I wish they would have obviously made it to another Super Bowl, but a month and a half ago, I didn't think they'd even be close to this spot. And here they are. So cool. I'm happy with the outcome of the season because I thought they were a terrible football team a month and a half ago when they laid an egg on Christmas Day to the Raiders, when they lost to the Packers in primetime. I thought they were awful. All of the mistakes, all of the penalties, the red zone troubles, all of that. And they overcame all of it. They made it this far. Okay, cool. I didn't even think they'd be there. With Baltimore, if they lose the game, my thought is, you know what? Lamar Jackson may be a 2-time MVP when this season is all said and done, but they had a prime opportunity to go win a championship with the roster they've assembled, the quarterback they have, and the coach that they have. They missed that opportunity. That's the way that I will view both of these teams.
I think
if whichever one loses.
The Chiefs have knocked off a lot of those teams over the years. I don't think it's anything there were Buffalo, Cincinnati.
You're
Tennessee
absolutely right, but
has
Kansas
been in those
City,
positions.
But it's about the way that Kansas City has played this season.
No, I think we obviously felt differently, you and I, when the Chiefs were struggling. I fully expected them to get back to this point anyway. You didn't. So for me, my expectation is for them to continue to do what I always expect them to do, right? So I think it's eye of the beholder stuff. I would tell you nationally, from what I could observe, the level of panic for the Chiefs was nowhere close to what it was here locally, right? Nationally, everyone just sort of assumes like the Chiefs are going to be there again, and they are. So I don't think the pressure for them changed at all for most people from the beginning of the year to midway to now. I think they've achieved this. I mean, this is 6 straight years. I think everyone just expected them to be there anyway. So the expectation for them is always to win the Super Bowl. I don't think there's anybody before the season that expected Baltimore to be here like this, right? So they've achieved a level of success that their fan base can be happy about. Now, does that mean they don't want to come out and win this game? Of course it doesn't. Of course it doesn't mean that. But look,
you're telling me that the fan base,
you're getting me caught up. You're getting me caught up in like an ESPN
as a 2-time MVP. They're going to just
getting me
happy.
caught up in an ESPN
cool.
first take type conversation, and I hate them because there is like.
But it's a relevant conversation.
It's not, because the pressure is equally high for everybody. Every single player wants to win this game just as much as the other guy. Every single coach wants to win this game just as much as the other guy. And every single fan wants their team to win this game any more than the other fan.
You don't think that there is a portion of, whether it's the fan base or even subconsciously some of these Kansas City players, that if they lose this game, the thought is, man, we didn't think we would be at this point, and hey, we made it this far. I think there absolutely is. You watch the way that they played a month ago, and now they're in this position. Cool. Like, that kind of exceeds where we thought we'd be. Things were really bad a month ago, a month and a half
I want you to ask Patrick Mahomes that question.
They're never going to admit that, but I think
no. I mean, like,
probably there is.
Put him on a lie detector and ask him that question. Like, it's, of course, no. Like, they absolutely expected to be here. Okay. Like, there's no question about that. That's what drives them to be great, right? Of course they think they're going to be here. They do, right? This again, like, these kinds of questions, I'm never very good at, because I don't think there's a correct answer. I think there's pressure for everybody involved. There's pressure on the 49ers and Lions. The most pressure that's internally. Externally, I think the most pressure in this entire experiment in the NFL remaining is certainly on Kyle Shanahan, because he's, the wonderkin that everybody thinks is the greatest coach of all time, and he still hadn't been able to get it done, and he's had incredible rosters and opportunities and still can't get it done. If we want to talk about the most pressure, look over there, because it is absolutely on him. There's no question.
I don't think there's a whole lot of pressure on Detroit.
That's external. That's external pressure. Internally, I think the pressure is across the board equal, right? For everybody involved. They don't know if they're going to get this opportunity again. It's very hard to do. So I think internally, it's an equal. I don't think Andy Reid wants to win this Super Bowl any less than any other, because he's won two now.
Not saying the desire's not there. Not saying that, these teams have a lack of desire compared to their opponent. That's not the case at all. But I think that when you, in retrospect, look at the way each one of these teams' seasons have played out, with Baltimore, you talked about the point differential a few minutes ago, the way that Baltimore has just beat up on opponents left and right. I mean, they're an incredibly talented team. Now's the time to grab the bull by the horns and get it across the finish line if you are the Baltimore Ravens. If you don't, I think you can look back on this season as a disappointment. Kansas City hasn't had that kind of season. Kansas City has squeaked by at times with victories. They've looked beatable multiple times this season. There were situations where the mistakes were inexcusable for Kansas City. They overcame those issues. That path to victory, the narrow margin of error that we know that Kansas City has had all season long, and the one way that they win football games, they've been able to take advantage of that throughout the playoffs to get to this point. But in my mind, there's no thought of like, okay, we've been just beating up on everybody. Now we just got to kick that door down and go win the whole damn thing. That's not the way that Kansas City's season is played out. It doesn't mean that there's not a desire to win. There absolutely is. I'm just saying Baltimore is in a position now where they've been so good all year long that the pressure, and it might just be external, it might not be internal, I don't know, but the pressure is on them to get it all the way done across the finish line, where with Kansas City, I don't think that exists.
So I think when we look at the point differential for Baltimore isn't even like inside the top 40 or 50 of a season to have been. So, it's very good, and it was far and away the best in football this year, but it hasn't been the best, right? It's been very good comparatively, but I'm just pulling this up to provide maybe a little bit of perspective. You go way down the list, and in top 50 may be too dramatic, but certainly not inside the top 20. The most recent team to be, the 2019 Ravens, their point differential was 250, where they're around 200 this year, right?
Did they win the Super Bowl that year?
I think that's
Did they get it done?
No.
Wasn't that Lamar Jackson's MVP year?
Good question. I'm not sure.
I think it was. Pretty sure it was.
So
I
don't know how else would they have had a point differential? Yeah. How else would they have had a point differential? The Patriots in 2000. Okay, so hang on. The Patriots in 2007 were the highest ever. They didn't get it done. The Rams in 99 are the third highest. I believe they did get it done. And I'm looking at modern history here. 98 Vikings up there did not get it done. The 85 Bears did get it done. Who else has been moderately recent? The Rams had another year in there. I believe they did not get it done. Patriots did get one in 2012, right there inside somewhere the top 20. So it's not like there's some direct correlation, I guess is my point, that if you were that good in the regular season, you must win a Super Bowl.
But the point is, all you have to do is go back 4 or 5 years to 2019 in Lamar Jackson's first MVP season, where they had that point differential. They were a rock solid from top to bottom. Really, I remember that team. They were really, really good that season, and they didn't get it done. Again, the pressure is on Baltimore because they've got this again. And now you're paying Lamar Jackson a ton of money to get it done and kick the door down and get it across the finish line.
I think that it's everybody wants to win. Again, I don't think there's a correct answer here. I think internally the pressure's all the same on all of these people. I just can't imagine a scenario where the Baltimore I can't imagine a scenario where the Baltimore fan base feels the same way the Buffalo fan base feels right now if they lose the game. Kansas City's fan base, they got over that hump, but Baltimore's over that hump too. Baltimore has a Super Bowl, moderately. Their head coach that's still on the team has a Super Bowl. Yeah, Lamar does. He's like 25, right? Yeah, I get it. There's not a lot of quarterbacks to do because Patrick Mahomes keeps getting them all, right? Or getting there and getting them up. Patrick Mahomes and Tom Brady keep winning all the dang Super Bowls. So there's not like, I don't know what else, there aren't very many quarterbacks that have one. Josh Allen doesn't have one. Joe Burrow doesn't have one. Aaron Rodgers has one, right? Like it's not something.
You're making my point.
Dan Marino has zero. I'm not proving any point.
Yeah, you are because it's fleeting. It's fleeting. And so when you have the complete team, and I think that we can both agree that from top to bottom, Baltimore is a more complete team than Kansas City is.
I'm picking Kansas City to win the game.
I get it. It doesn't mean Kansas City's not a good team, but Baltimore from top to bottom is a more complete football team than Kansas City is. I think that's objective.
Deeper. They're deeper.
I think they're from top to bottom a better team. The stats back that up. And so if you've got that and you are in this deep, get the whole dang thing done if you're Baltimore. Don't know if you're going to get another chance to do it. 2019, you didn't get it done. You've gotten another opportunity now. Now you're paying your quarterback a whole lot more than you were in 2019. You don't know if you're ever going to be back there. Get it done. Kansas City's been there multiple times before. Sure, you want to continue to keep that going, but the pressure, again, is on Baltimore. It's easy. That's it. Yeah, I know you're saying that there's not a right answer. No, there is. It's pretty simple. It's Baltimore.
No, it's not. There's not. I mean, ask anybody. The pressure is that's not an objective pressure. Like everybody feels pressure. There's pressure on all of them. Patrick Mahomes is chasing Brady to be the GOAT, right? Andy Reid's chasing Belichick to be the GOAT. There are all kinds of different pressures on this game from all four of the remaining teams. It doesn't, should the Lions feel the same way? Who knows if the Lions are ever going to get there? They haven't been there in like 50 years. Should they be the most pressure? Do they have the most pressure because of that? They're paying Jared Goff a ton of money and they've never been here. Shouldn't they feel the most pressure then? No, of course not. No. Like they feel the same amount of pressure as everybody else. They all want to win the Super Bowl.
I don't buy it. I think that there are varying levels of that. And it's nobody's ever going to admit it one way or another, but I do think that there are varying levels. And I think that sometimes those things play out on the course during the course of a game. When you've got a team, like here's a great example, Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers. Nobody thought that they would be in that position to win a playoff game and move on. You can just sort of go out there and let it ride. Right. And so you want to tell me that even subconsciously, there's not some thought that, hey, nobody thought we'd be here, so we've got all the pressure off of our shoulders. We'll just go out there and play. That absolutely plays its way out over the course of a game and with different teams, right?
If you want to quantify pressure, and I think it's an impossible thing to do, I think the place you could find it is if jobs are in danger, right? Like if anyone... Buffalo, that's a more quantifiable because Sean McDermott might lose his job, right? Like I suppose you could look, but Baltimore's not in any danger of that stuff. No, none of these teams are, except maybe San Francisco, but they're not going to make a change at Kyle Shanahan. He's the guy that's underachieved the most out of this group, I think, if you were trying to be honest about it. And I think he's awesome, but he's underachieved. So I think you can go find.
Not to be a Kyle Shanahan defender, but he got San Francisco to the Super Bowl with Jimmy Garoppolo as quarterback, and they did not have Christian McCaffrey.
Well, he also played a part in Colin Kaepernick coming there and then punted on that. And then some of those quarterback issues have been self-inflicted. I think Kyle Shanahan's great, but I think that, if you're looking for somebody out of the group that hasn't achieved what their expectation is, it would be him. But again, I think you can find different varying levels of the pressure guys. And the other part of it is not to get philosophical, certain players feel pressure more than us. Some players probably play pretty pressure free most of the time and don't let that stuff get to them. Some players thrive in it. Patrick Mahomes, right? That's why he's been incredible as an underdog. He thrives in those moments. Some players crumble in those moments. I'm not sure we have a glaring example of that. Jared Goff's been to a Super Bowl, right? So I don't know if there's anybody that I think it's just, there are too many different ways to look at pressure. They all feel different kinds of pressure, certainly, but I don't look at Baltimore and Kansas City and say Baltimore's they have to win. No, because I think Kansas City's going to win the game anyway. I've thought that for a while, right? So maybe San Francisco, because there's probably not a lot of people picking Detroit. Maybe. Is Deebo Samuel playing, by the way? I need to make a pick on that guy. I got to check into that.
I think he's trending that way. That was the last thing I saw.
Yeah, I gotta dig into that guy. I haven't paid much attention to the off seasons, but listen, it's going to be great. I love it. I love and hope that Lamar Jackson and the Ravens enter the conversation consistently, right there with the Chiefs and the Bills and the Bengals, and I hope, because I love to see great quarterback play, and so I would love to see a Mahomes Lamar Jackson rivalry, which hasn't really existed. They haven't played much head to head. I'll look at that. We'll look at what they've done to each other head to head. Lamar Jackson's comments this week were funny. If you didn't see him, they're like, "Do you enjoy, getting to play Patrick Mahomes?" He's like, "No, I don't enjoy that at all." It was a very candid and on it. It was awesome. But we'll look at that. I'm going to pull up their head to head numbers. Maybe that's where we'll go next. We're a little behind on a break here. Weigh in if you'd like on the KFH hotline 869-1240. We'll come back. We'll continue to get you ready for the AFC Championship game on Sports Daily.
Go ahead. I think I want to hear this. Sports Daily is on KFH.
All right, welcome back in, everybody. Sports Daily here on KFH. Oh, man. Mahomes versus Jackson. Here we go. They haven't actually played a ton. The Chiefs are 3-1, I believe, in Mahomes versus Jackson. It's just like it's not been as often as you'd think. And Jackson's had some injuries in there mixed in. I don't know how much to like pull back from what we do. We talk about how young Lamar Jackson is. It's crazy is how young Patrick Mahomes still is, Tommy. Like that's what's so crazy. That's what has been so wild, right? Is that Patrick Mahomes is still also very young. They've met 4 times in their career. The Chiefs have won 3. Baltimore's only win was when they were at home. And I think that you have to, when you look at their playoff history, it's that's where it's not close, right? Lamar Jackson has not been overall over his body of work a good playoff quarterback. Now he's had some good moments, and the sample size is too small. Where Mahomes has just been historically great. So I don't know that we can take a whole lot of, it's not like when we see Mahomes versus Allen, right? And we can fully expect them to both be great because they almost always are. We haven't had enough of it yet. And I hope that we get it. Like, I'd love to see this bud into another one of those, rivalries like we've seen develop for the Chiefs over the years. Just like I hope the Chargers can become that, because I love great quarterback play. I love the angles of this guy versus that guy when these guys are clearly at the top of their game.
Well, I think if you compare Patrick Mahomes with the other quarterbacks that are kind of that premier quarterback class in the AFC, especially, it should be a Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson rivalry. I almost think that should be the preeminent rivalry between quarterbacks in that conference. I think that it should be a bigger rivalry than Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, a bigger rivalry than Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow, even a bigger rivalry than Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert. I think it should be Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson. It hasn't gotten to that point, and it's because of, number one, the lack of times they played each other, but also Baltimore in the playoffs haven't gotten to a point to where they're challenging Kansas City until really now. Back in 2019, they did to an extent, but that's got to continue. And I think that again, that's why the onus is on the Ravens and on Lamar Jackson to get over that hump and to not only do it this season, but continue it on. I mean, the reason why Baltimore locked down Lamar Jackson for as long as they did, when really there was speculation that they didn't really want to, is because they truly believe that now Lamar Jackson is the guy to get them to that position year in and year out. But you got to take advantage of it right now.
Yeah, I hope that Jackson plays well. I think the Chiefs will win. I certainly think there's a scenario where Jackson plays well and the Chiefs win, right? I don't think that the Chiefs only win if Jackson has a dud performance. And I don't want that to happen because I root for Lamar Jackson. I root for his story. I root for the fact that he has basically blazed his own trail as a player, sticking to quarterback when people told him not to, as a businessman who has represented himself that, people mocked and made fun of and done all these things. But guess what? He's getting paid just like the rest of them, and he doesn't have to pay an agent's fee. So who's laughing now, right? Now, that's nothing against agents. Like, if I was in his position, I would have one so I didn't have to think about it, but he wants to think about it. Good for him. Like, he's just consistently been belittled when he is great at what he does. And that bugs me. And so I want him to be awesome all the time. And I want him to be awesome in this game. And I want Mahomes to be awesome. And I want it to be this epic, all-time, classic, great, whatever. So I hope he's great. And I hope Mahomes is just a little bit greater because I'm picking the Chiefs. I have been. I can't stop that now. I've been with them through this, evolving, just because I believe in the style of football they're playing, holistically. I think great defense and ball control is the pendulum swing of this pass-happy NFL. And I think we're seeing that. Honestly, I think we're seeing it with all four of the remaining teams. That's what's crazy about this. Think about that for a second. All four of these teams, ball control, run the ball, play good defense. Like, that's the philosophy, and win on the lines of scrimmage, right? Like, that's the philosophy of all four of these teams. None of these aren't these are the Dolphins are the other side, right? That's that in this new era. No, these are old school teams with old school coaches. I love it. I think it's great because I love to see the ebbs and flows of the NFL. And that's what we have here. We have teams that run the ball and we have teams that play good defense.
I go back to what I said earlier this week, that I feel like Kansas City has to play its A game to win. Doesn't mean that they won't play their A game, but I think that the path in which Kansas City wins the game is more narrow than Baltimore. I think Baltimore can do a couple different things to win the game, where Kansas City has their path. Kansas City has to run the ball effectively, control the clock, and play lockdown defense. But all of that being said, and we spent a long time talking about Mahomes versus Jackson and the weapons offensively and all of that, I have this gut feeling that tells me that either Harrison Butker or Justin Tucker is going to win the game for their respective team.
Yeah.
I really think that. I think it's going to come down to two of the best kickers in the National Football League winning the game for their respective team. So knowing that, I'm going to take the Chiefs and I'm going to take the points because I do think it's going to be a field goal game. I don't, even if Baltimore wins the game, I don't think they're going to win it by 3.5. That number's too big.
Yeah.
That half point. I think it's going to be a field goal game. Either Harrison Butker or Justin Tucker winning the game.
I'm going to be tempted to go money line just because I think the Chiefs are going to win, but that is a really, really attractive number to take. I want to point something else out. Back to, we were talking about the 4 teams remaining. Remember before the season with all the chatter about running backs and how they don't have value in the NFL? Let me just enlighten everybody real quick. The 49ers have the highest paid running back in football. The Lions, between their 2 running backs, have what would be the 5th or 6th most invested right at that position. The Chiefs obviously have done it with Pacheco, but they invested a lot in Clyde Edwards-Helaire and Pacheco, teams that have, invested in the position. And then the Ravens, of course, they have about 8 billion running backs. And they drafted J.K. Dobbins, right? And I know he hasn't been, but you're looking at 4 teams here that have absolutely invested in the position. Those are the 4 teams remaining. So you can miss me with the running backs don't have value anymore. Now, they may have high replacement value, which may be also, well, it is. It's also a part of the problem contractually. But don't tell me they don't matter, because clearly they do. These 4 teams all run the ball, and they all invest in the position in different ways.
Well, on top of that, you look at the rushing offenses this season, and 3 of the 4 teams that are remaining are in the top 5 in rushing attacks in the NFL. Ravens are number 1, Niners are number 3, Lions are number 5. Kansas City is further down that list. Kansas City is down middle of the road. They're like 15th, 17th, somewhere around.
But we know
there.
that's fake. We know that's a fake, that's a fake number for Kansas City. One, because they've committed to it now.
Well,
I do think they've had
the attempts are much, much lower for Kansas City than those other teams.
And so you've got that. You've got, the different ways that they try to run. You've also got the fact that they've had to protect Pacheco this year. I mean, they just have. That's a reality of their situation.
Yeah. And the other thing to point out, the Ravens have 26 rushing touchdowns. The Niners have 27. The Lions have 27. Kansas City has 9. So clearly that there's
stop running jet sweeps to McCole Hardman.
Let's
Let's start there. And maybe that would solve that problem. But again, I love it because everybody tries to figure out the NFL and speak finalities into it, but the NFL has never been that way. The NFL has always been, what have you done for me lately? And a league of adjustments. And I mean, I've been for 2 years, I said, watch what happens when Tampa did to Patrick Mahomes what it did in that Super Bowl. And then when we saw Patrick Mahomes and the way defense played him the next year, to me, that was the turning point. And I said it at the time, watch, this is the way defenses are going to start playing all over the league. And we're going to see, that's why I like Mike Vrabel so much, right? And Dan Campbell and guys that are cut from that cloth, punch you in the mouth football is making a comeback right now. And it will for a few years. And then we'll see it go back the other way. And the finesse will get you there. But look at the 4 teams remaining. I mean, that's what it is. They win the lines of scrimmage and they control the clock, or at least they try to. That's what they want to do. It's awesome, and I love it. And I'm really excited about championship weekend, and I want 2 games. Which game do you think, Tommy, has a better chance of a blowout?
I think the Niners-Lions has a better chance of a blowout. I think that the biggest way for Detroit to win the game is to keep the Niners, under 20 points. I really think that. And if the
I don't
Niners
think they're doing that. Yeah, I don't think they're doing that.
If the Niners, I don't think they're doing that either. But if the Niners can put up a lot of points, I think it could very quickly get away from Detroit. And then you add in the factor of Jared Goff playing away from home outdoors. That plays into it, I think, a little bit as well. I think that's probably the more likely game that we'll see a blowout.
That's what my brain says too. But I do think about this AFC Championship game in a couple of ways. One, Lamar Jackson could play like he did in the first half, and Kansas City plays its best game, And I could see that scenario playing out, right, where they win
KC's
by
not blowing out
double
Baltimore.
digits.
KC's not blowing out Baltimore.
I could also see Baltimore just being that good, right? So
That's
I
a more
think
likely scenario. If there's a blowout in the AFC Championship game, it will be the Ravens blowing out the Chiefs.
See, I think you're overlooking Jackson's struggles in the postseason a little bit too
I'm
much
just
there.
saying, I don't think there's going to be a blowout. I don't think that's going to happen. But if it does, it will be Baltimore over Kansas.
Like 4.5 out of 5 times for Lamar Jackson, it hasn't gone well in the postseason, right? Like if that happens to them, if he doesn't do well and gives Kansas City's offense easy opportunities to score.
But on top of, I mean, it's not about Jackson in my mind, Jackson and the Ravens. Who has Kansas City blown out this year?
Who have they blown out in the last 4 years? They don't ever blow anybody out.
Right. That's why I'm saying it's not going to be a Kansas City blowout. That's not going to happen.
I don't look, my brain tells me that the most likely outcome for a blowout would be San Francisco over Detroit. But I do think it exists. And I'll tell you the least likely, Detroit blows out San Francisco.
Yeah.
That would be the least likely blowout scenario. I only ask that because I love championship weekend so much because usually you get incredible games and then you could get a blowout in the Super Bowl, right? But championship weekend usually delivers for us, and I hope it does again. Again, you'll hear the Chiefs on KNSS or KFH this weekend with us as they take aim at the Ravens. All right, we'll come back. We'll look at some of the college basketball this weekend real quick when we return on Sports Daily.
This thing. Go! Sports Daily is on KFH.
All right, real quick, I want to mention what happened out at League 42. Just a ridiculous situation. They had the Jackie Robinson statue stolen there. If you know anything about the people that did that, you can go find the surveillance video in a lot of different places. Give police a call. Like, what the hell are you going to do with a life-size bronze statue? Give me a break. Bob does an incredible job with that organization. It is legitimately one of the pillars of our community, and I mean that. It is such a cool place and facility and thing and idea and all of these things, and to rip that away, like, just what a stupid thing to do. So if you know anything about that, go check those out. Go check out those videos, see if you can't help them out and help find, maybe hopefully find the statue, I guess, first and foremost. If not, find the people that did that. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, I know that was a big news story yesterday, as it should be. It should continue that way, until those people are tracked down and held accountable. You said all the right words there. Bob Lutz does an incredible job with League 42 and everything that he's done in giving back to those underprivileged kids learning how to play baseball. And so it's a cause near and dear to us at KFH. And so I sincerely hope that police are able to find the people that did this and bring them to justice, and they get that statue back.
Yeah, it's a shame, and I don't think it doesn't do anything to the momentum of that organization, and they'll rally behind it. It really is, like, what a cool, for people that love baseball like us, what an amazing thing to do to give kids a chance to play baseball. The Cats get Houston. Kansas goes to Ames and Iowa State. Wichita State hosts SMU. Boy, there's an 0-for-3 chance this weekend.
Yeah.
It's a tough weekend, but I love it. Rise up to the challenge, all three of them, because they'll be fun games to watch. We'll come back. We'll tell you where you can find them next.
If you missed Bob and Jeff, you missed this.
It was a poorly phrased question, but I view Arizona as a potential giant.
Hey, but Washington is.
I
It
know.
has been.
I understand that. I don't need you to tell me.
Well, you needed
I'll
somebody.
knock that hat off your head.
Bring it.
I'll bring it. You know what? One of these days I will bring it.
You're only getting older, so good luck.
Bob and Jeff, afternoons at 2 on KFH. Live sports radio 24/7. This is 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
Wichita's most listened to sports radio. 97.5 and 1240 KFH.
All right. Good stuff this week. Enjoy the game, everybody, this weekend. Again, you'll hear the national call all the way through on KFH. That coverage begins at 1. You'll get the Chiefs Radio Network pre- and post-game coverage over on KNSS at 12. You'll hear the Westwood one on both places. You've got Shocker Men over on KYN Sunday at 1 as well. And then, of course, you'll hear Lions Niners as well. K-State basketball on Saturday. That coverage begins at 10 o'clock against Houston. And then you've got Butler basketball at 3:45 on Saturday as well. Tommy, enjoy the games this weekend. We appreciate Max filling in for Jad today for us. We'll be back here to break it all down on Monday. I'm Jacob Albracht. We'll see you there.